Rowe had never kept a photograph of a woman in his life, not until the night his associate slid one across the desk and said, "She's been asking questions about the Meridian accounts." One photo? A woman outside a laundromat in Savannah, Georgia. Coat pulled tight, hair loose in the wind, looking over her shoulder like she already knew the world wasn't safe. She wasn't looking at the camera. She didn't know there was one. Garrett looked at it for a long time. Then he said, "Find out everything." Madeleine Voss thought distance was a kind of armor. She had built her life around that belief. New city, new name on the lease, new job that paid in cash and asked no questions. She left Portland 18 months ago with 2 bags, a severance check from an architecture firm that folded under the weight of its own corruption, and a hard drive she was not supposed to have. The drive contained 3 years of financial architecture she had designed without knowing what she was really building. Shell companies nested inside legitimate developments. Money moving through permits and drainage contracts and steel procurement invoices. She had been the hand that drew the blueprints. She had not known whose money filled the walls. By the time she understood, her boss was dead, and the men who visited his office were not police. Savannah had received her with heat and slow Spanish moss, in streets that looked like they had never been in a hurry. She rented a room above a bakery on a quiet block and found work at a small drafting firm that handled residential renovations and historic preservation. Nothing glamorous, nothing that would draw attention. She made coffee at 6 each morning and walked to work and tried to feel like a person who had a future. Her colleague and closest friend in the city was Jess, who was 26 and loud and had opinions about every restaurant on the waterfront and no sense of personal space. Jess had adopted Madeleine the way some people adopt a stray, immediately, completely, with a total unwillingness to be told no. On a Thursday night in late October, Jess decided they were going out. Madeleine had been saying no to going out for 4 months. Jess was not deterred by 4 months. She arrived at Madeleine's door with 2 dresses over her arm and a bottle of wine she had already opened. "You reorganized your bookshelf last week," she said. "Alphabetically, by author's last name. That is a cry for help. That is a system. You color-coded your grocery list. Efficiency. Maddie." Jess set down the wine and looked at her with the specific seriousness of someone who had been patient for too long. "You are 28 years old, and you have not left this apartment on a Friday night since August. I am not asking you to be happy. I'm asking you to be in a room with music." Madeleine looked at the dress in Jess's hand. Black. Simple. Not the kind of thing that invited conversation. She said yes because she was tired of losing arguments to someone she actually liked. The bar sat near the river, down a narrow street lined with iron railings and low-hanging lights. Inside it was warm and dark and smelled like old wood and something sweet Madeleine could not name. A jazz trio played in the back corner, unhurried. Good. The crowd moved at the pace of people who had nowhere to be and had decided to enjoy that. Jess ordered 2 drinks and leaned close. "See? Human beings. Normal ones." Madeleine kept her eyes on the room. 2 exits, 1 bartender, security near the front, who was watching his phone. She had not stopped running security checks on every room she entered. She was not sure she ever would. "You're doing the thing," Jess said. "What thing?" "The thing where you look at a room like you're calculating escape routes." "I'm not." "You looked at the emergency exit sign twice." Madeleine took her drink. "It's a habit." "From what?" She didn't answer. Jess let it go, which was one of the things Madeleine had come to rely on without meaning to. For a while, it worked. The music filled the thinking spaces. Jess made her laugh about a client who had specified in writing that he wanted a bathroom that felt emotionally Italian, and they had spent 2 weeks trying to determine what that meant. By the second drink, Madeleine felt something inside her unclench. Not disappear, just shift back a few inches. Then a man settled into the space at the bar beside her. He was in his mid-40s. Good-looking in a way that suggested it had never been the most useful thing about him. Dark jacket, no tie. The kind of stillness that takes years to develop, or is simply what happens when a man stops having to prove anything to anyone in a room. He was not looking at her. He ordered whiskey and turned slightly toward the jazz trio. watching the piano player with what looked like genuine interest. Madeleine noticed him the way she noticed anything that didn't add up. He was too calm for the room, not detached, present but contained, like a man who had chosen exactly how much of himself to bring tonight and left the rest somewhere else. She looked away. Jess had stepped outside to take a call. A different man appeared on Madeleine's other side, young, practiced smile, expensive watch worn loosely to suggest he didn't need to try. He said something about her dress, then her drink, then asked if she was waiting for someone, and she said yes because that was cleaner than no. He didn't leave. His hand came to the bar near her wrist, not touching, but close enough to mean something, and he leaned in and said, "I just want to talk." Madeleine moved her hand, and I just answered. A voice came from her left. Quiet, not loud enough to shift the room, but sharp enough to cut through the noise. She said no. The man with the watch turned. So did Madeleine. The man in the dark jacket had not moved from his position at the bar. His glass sat loosely in his hand. He was looking at the man with the watch, the way a person looks at something they have already decided is not a problem, which is somehow more unsettling than if they looked worried. The man with the watch lifted both hands. "Easy. You were leaving," the man in the dark jacket said, not a question. A beat. Then the watchman left. Madeleine turned to face her unexpected company. "Thank you." He took a sip of his whiskey. "You had it. Then why step in?" He glanced at her for the first time. His eyes were dark gray, level, the kind that didn't move around looking for purchase because they had already found it. Because it was faster. No performance. No pivot to make the moment about him. He simply looked back at the piano player. Madeleine didn't know what to do with that. She also didn't leave. "Are you from Savannah?" she asked. Sometimes he didn't say more. "That isn't an answer. It's the one I have tonight." Her mouth moved despite her best intentions. She had told herself many times in the past 18 months that she was done with interesting men. They were expensive in ways that had nothing to do with money. "Madeleine," she said. He looked at her hand when she offered it. Considered it for 1 second, not dismissively, but as if considering things was simply how he moved through the world. Then he took it. His grip was warm and brief and entirely self-possessed. "Colt," he said. "Just Colt, tonight. You always answer like there are conditions." His mouth moved faintly. "You always ask like you already know there are." Jess came back from her call, slowed when she took in the scene, and then recovered with suspicious speed. Madeleine caught her eye and shook her head once. Jess mouthed, "He's gorgeous." Madeleine looked away before she agreed out loud. When she turned back, Colt was watching the room again. Not guarding it. Just knowing it. The way men who are used to being responsible for spaces know them. "Do you come here often?" she asked, and immediately hated herself. He almost smiled. "Do you want a real answer, or a polite one?" "Real." "Then no. I don't usually come to bars." "Why tonight?" He picked up his glass. "Set it down. Someone told me this place had a good piano player." She looked toward the trio. "The pianist was good. Better than good. Do you play?" "I used to." The answer closed as fast as it opened. They talked for 20 minutes, not about anything important. The city. The heat. A book she had seen someone reading on the trolley that morning and couldn't identify. He had an opinion about it. Quiet, specific, confident without being aggressive. She disagreed with part of it. He listened to her reasoning and then said simply, "Fair." She hated how much he liked that word in his mouth. Jess appeared at her elbow. "I have an early morning." She looked at Madeleine with the precision of a person delivering information and asking a question at the same time. Madeleine looked at Colt. He was watching her with that same unhurried attention, not asking for anything, not angling for something. Just there. "I should go," Madeleine said. "You should," he agreed. Neither of them moved for 3 seconds. Then he reached into his jacket and placed a card on the bar. No name. Just a number. "If you want to continue arguing about that book." She didn't pick it up right away. He noticed. He didn't say anything about it. She picked it up, The next morning, she found herself thinking about him while making coffee, which she told herself was entirely reasonable because the conversation had been good and she was lonely in the way that becomes so habitual you only notice it when something interrupts it. She did not text the number. She also did not throw the card away. On the fourth day, she texted, "I looked up the book. You were right about the ending. I still think you're wrong about the author's intent." His reply came in under 2 minutes. "Dinner. I'll pick you up at 7. She stared at the screen. "That's not a response to what I said." "I know. 7? She should have said no. She had a list of reasons, most of them good. She was hiding from people who had resources and patience. She did not need complications. She had built a life specifically designed to not need anyone in it. She said yes because she had spent 18 months making the safe choice and was still here, still afraid, still reorganizing things that did not need reorganizing. The restaurant was small and close to the water. No sign outside. The kind of place that doesn't advertise because it has never needed to. Colt was already there when she arrived. He stood when she walked in, which she had not expected, and he looked at her for one moment with a kind of stillness that isn't emptiness. It's everything held quiet. "You look beautiful," he said. Simple. Factual. Like a man who wasn't trying to win something. Conversation moved easily and then, suddenly, didn't. "What do you do?" she asked. "When you're not appearing in bars and rescuing people who didn't need rescuing." Something shifted in his face, small, controlled. Business, property, some private contracts. That covers a wide range of sins. His eyes held hers. Yes. She appreciated that he didn't pretend otherwise. She told him she was an architect, that she had come to Savannah for a change of pace, that she liked the city because it moved slowly and asked few questions. He listened with his full attention, which was a rarer thing than most people understood. "You hold the door shut from the inside," he said finally. She stopped. "What?" "When you talk about yourself, you choose which rooms to open." Her fingers tightened around her glass. "Most people do." "Not the way you do." His voice wasn't accusatory. It was careful. "You're not private. You're protected." She looked at him for a long moment. "What about you?" "Me. You answer questions like you're counting how many truths fit in one sentence." He leaned back. "Some answers change the shape of a room, and you'd rather leave the room the same." He looked at her then, really looked, the way he had in the bar. "Sometimes. Tonight, no." She walked back with him along the river. The water moved black and silver beside them. He didn't try to take her hand. She was more aware of him for it. "What made you leave Portland?" he asked. She went still. He noticed. He always noticed. "You don't have to answer." "I know." She looked at the water. "My firm was involved in things I didn't understand until too late. When I understood, I left." "Were you safe?" "I didn't know." "Are you now?" She looked at him. "I don't know that either." He was quiet for a moment. The river moved beside them. Then he said, "What kind of things did you design?" Something in his voice had changed. She couldn't name it. She filed it away. "Commercial developments," she said. "Mixed use, financial infrastructure." He nodded once. The silence felt different now. She told herself it was the dark. He took her home. At the door, he stopped one step away and looked at her with that same contained attention. She had the sudden sharp feeling that she had been here before. Not this door, not this man, but this moment, standing on the edge of something that had already decided what it was going to be. "I'd like to see you again," he said. She looked at him for a long time. "I don't make things easy." "I noticed." His mouth moved faintly. "I'm asking anyway." She said yes. She didn't know why it felt like it cost her something. It also felt like it gave something back. They saw each other 4 more times over 2 weeks. Dinner, once a walk that turned into 2 hours and a coffee that turned into 3. She started to let the walls back by a single inch at a time, which was more than she had let them back for anyone in nearly 2 years. And then she saw the folder. She had gone back to his apartment for the first time. Just the view, she had told herself. He had mentioned the river view was better from the upper floors of the building where he stayed when he was in the city. The rooms were dark and clean and smelled like cedar and old leather. The view was exactly what he had said. He had stepped away to take a call. She had moved toward the window, and the folder was on the desk, half open, a single page visible. She was not trying to look. She was not that kind of person, but she was a person who had spent 3 years looking at financial architecture and had learned to recognize certain signatures in documents the way a doctor recognizes symptoms. The page showed a property transfer. 2 names, a holding company she recognized, because she had drawn its shell structure herself 2 years ago in Portland for a man who told her it was a real estate investment vehicle. And below it 1 name she recognized. Garrett Rowe. She stood in front of the window and did not move until she heard him end the call. When he came back, her face was composed because she had spent 18 months practicing composure. "Who is Garrett Rowe?" she said. The room changed. Colt, the man she had been calling Colt, stood in the doorway with an expression she had not seen on him before. Not surprise, not guilt. Something more complicated. Something that had been waiting. Madeleine. "Who is Garrett Rowe?" she said again. Her voice was steady. She had made it that way on purpose. He crossed the room and stopped a careful distance from her. When he spoke, the voice was the same. The face was the same. But something behind it had come forward. "My name is Garrett Cole Rowe." She heard the sentence. She heard every syllable of it. She heard the silence after it, which was long and dense and full of things she already knew were true and had been hoping were not. Garrett Cole Rowe. The man her former employer had spoken of only in lowered voices. The man whose name appeared in the buried layers of 3 financial structures she had helped design, without knowing whose money was moving through them. The man who had sent people to ask questions about the Meridian accounts, which were her accounts, or rather, the accounts she had accidentally inherited when she walked out with that hard drive. She laughed. Once. It had no warmth in it. "You knew who I was." Not a question. "I knew your name." He paused. "I knew what you had. You knew I was running." "Yes." She turned to face the window. The river moved below them in the dark. "How long before the bar? How long were you watching before you decided to make it personal?" He was quiet for 1 beat too long. "The bar," she said. "You were already there. The man who bothered me, was that arranged?" "No." Sharp. Certain. "That was real. Everything I stepped in to stop was real." "What about everything else?" He didn't answer. She turned back. Her eyes burned and she refused to let them. "You want the drive. I wanted to know who you were. Those are not different things." Something moved across his face. Not performance. Whatever it was happened behind his eyes, and he let her see the edge of it, which she thought might be the most honest thing he had done all night. "The drive puts you in danger," he said. "People looking for it are not careful about what gets broken. And you are. I try to be. With people who have something you need." He stepped forward once, stopped. His voice dropped. "With you, specifically." She stared at him. "You don't get to say that tonight." He accepted that. She almost wished he hadn't. A man who argued back was easier to be angry at. She picked up her coat. "I'm leaving. Madeleine." She stopped at the door. "The people looking for that drive are not going to stop," he said. "I can stop them." "In exchange for what?" He was quiet. She looked at him over her shoulder. "Say it." "In exchange for you staying where I can see you." She almost laughed again. "You sound like every man who ever told me safety was a reason to stay in a room I didn't choose." His jaw shifted. "I know." And yet, his eyes stayed on her face. "I'm not wrong about the danger." She walked out. She got in a cab. She called Jess from the street and said, "I need to tell you something." Jess's voice was immediate. "I'll put the kettle on." She told her everything. sitting at Jess's kitchen table at 11 at night with chamomile tea going cold between her hands. The drive, Portland, the firm, the accounts, Colt, Garrett Rowe, all of it. Jess listened without interruption, which was either respect or terror. When Madeleine finished, Jess said, "What is on the drive?" "Enough to end 3 careers and open a federal investigation." "Have you looked at it since Portland?" "Once. When I first left, I couldn't after that." Jess folded her hands on the table. "You need a lawyer. I need to think. You need both." Madeleine wrapped her hands around the mug. "The worst part is that I don't know if he's wrong. About the danger." Jess looked at her carefully. "What part is the second worst?" Madeleine looked at the wall. "That I believed him." "Which part?" "All of it." She closed her eyes. "When he talked, I believed him. I still believe most of it, and I don't know how to be angry at a man I can't completely disbelieve." Jess reached across and covered her hand. "That's not stupidity. That's the worst kind of right." That night, Madeleine lay in the dark in Jess's spare room and thought about what she actually knew versus what she felt, which had been 2 separate columns in her mind for most of her adult life. In the left column, Garrett Rowe was powerful and had been surveilling her. In the right column, he had stepped in at the bar before she even registered the threat. In the left column, he had used a false name. In the right column, he had used a false name. In the right column, Colt was still his name, just not all of it. In the left column, he wanted the drive. In the right column, so did other people. And she had spent 18 months not knowing who or how close. By morning, the columns hadn't balanced. She wasn't sure they were supposed to. His message came at 9. "I'm not asking you to trust me. I'm asking you to let me show you who is looking." She did not answer. At noon, 3 names. No obligation. Just information you deserve to have. At 3, she typed back, "Send the names." They were names she recognized. One of them she had seen in her former employer's files the night everything collapsed. One of them had sent a man to her apartment in Portland 6 weeks after she left. She stared at the screen for a long time. Then she called him. He answered before the second ring. "You know what the drive contains," she said. "Most of it." He paused. "Enough to know you didn't build what's on it knowingly." "How do you know that?" "Because the architecture is clean." Too clean. Someone who understood what they were building would have left themselves more exits. She sat with that for a moment. "What do you want to do with it?" "Give it to the right people. People who can use it to close this without leaving you as the only name attached to it." "And what do you get?" "Clean accounts. Clean distance from the men who used them." She laughed softly. "You're implicated too." "Yes." "And you're telling me." His voice was even. "You were going to find that out. I'd rather you find it from me." She looked out Jess's kitchen window at the narrow street below. A man was walking a dog. A woman was arguing with a parking meter. Everything ordinary and unaware. "Why did you use a different name?" she said. "Because I wanted to know who you were before you knew who I was." "And who am I?" A pause. "Someone I wasn't expecting." She pressed her palm to the cool glass. "That doesn't earn anything." "I know. It doesn't explain anything." "No. So why say it?" His answer came quietly. "Because it's true, and you deserve that much even if it doesn't help you." She was quiet for a long time. Then she said, "I need 3 days. Take them. I want to look at the drive again. I want to understand every name on it before I hand it to anyone." "All right. And I want to do it alone. Not in your apartment, not with your people nearby." Another pause, shorter this time. "Take what you need." She had expected resistance. The absence of it unsettled her more than the surveillance had. 3 days. She and Jess at the kitchen table, the laptop between them, the drive's contents spread across her screen like the floor of a demolished building. She could see now what she had built without seeing, the way each shell structure nested into the next, the way money moved through permits and drainage and development contracts like water through a structure designed to channel it invisibly. She found Garrett's name in 6 places. Not as the architect, that was her, but as a beneficiary, a silent name on accounts she had not known were connected. She also found her former employer's name, and his, and the signatures of men who had sent people to find her. She found enough. On the morning of the fourth day, she called Garrett. "I want to meet," she said. "Neutral location. Jess comes." "All right. And you tell me the whole truth, not the version that protects your interests, the version that leaves us both in it." "A beat." "Yes." They met at a coffee shop 2 blocks from the river. Garrett arrived alone. He sat across from her with his hands on the table, open, which she noticed. He walked her through it without softening it. His history with the accounts, how he had inherited connections from a family business he had spent 5 years trying to restructure, where the lines between his money and darker money had blurred, and where he had drawn them back. He told her what he had done. He told her what he hadn't. It wasn't clean. It wasn't innocent. But it was the truth, and she had built a career on reading structures, and she recognized the shape of something real versus something constructed. Jess sat beside her and did not say a word, which was how Madeleine knew she believed him too. At the end, Garrett said, "I know what I cost you. The name, the city, the life you were building." Madeleine looked at her coffee. "You didn't take those. The men looking for the drive did. I was one of the reasons they were looking." "Yes." She met his eyes. "What do you want to do about that?" "I want to make it right," he said. "However long that takes." She studied him for a moment. Then she said, "I'm going to hand the drive to a federal contact. Everything on it, your name included." He nodded. "I know. You'll be questioned." "Yes, it may not stay quiet. I have lawyers." His mouth tightened. "I'd rather face questions than let you keep carrying this." Jess made a small sound that she immediately covered with a cough. Madeleine looked down at her hands. The drive was in her coat pocket. It had been there for 3 days like a stone that had changed shape. "Why?" she said, not a challenge, genuine. Garrett looked at her. For the first time, he looked something close to uncertain. "Because when you walked into that bar in a coat you didn't need and checked every exit in under 4 seconds, I thought, this is a woman who has been running for a long time and has gotten very good at it." He paused, and I thought, she shouldn't have to. The coffee shop was ordinary around them. Noise, steam, strangers with laptops and takeout orders, all of it proceeding without any knowledge of the conversation at this table. Madeleine stood. She reached into her pocket and placed the drive on the table between them, not handing it to him, just putting it down. "You handle the contact," she said. "I want my name attached to the cooperation, not the construction." He looked at the drive, then at her. "Yes. And after? I want to see every document that comes out of it." "Yes." She picked up her coat. "I'm going to need a better job. My current firm doesn't pay enough for federal drama." Something shifted in his expression. Not a smile. Something quieter and more lasting than that. "I know a firm," he said. "Chicago. Private commission work, no shells. You're already offering me a job. I'm already offering you anything I have." Jess made the sound again. This time she didn't bother covering it. Madeleine looked at him for a long time. Then she picked up her cup, drank the last of her coffee, and said, "I'll think about Chicago." She left before that could become a promise. The federal contact took 3 weeks to process what she handed over. During that time, Madeleine stayed in Savannah, kept working, kept making coffee at 6 in the morning, and walking to the drafting office and coming home to the apartment above the bakery. She did not see Garrett. She sent 3 messages, one with a question about her name in the documents, one to say the preliminary confirmation had come through, one that said only thank you, and which she almost didn't send. He responded to all 3. The last one he responded to with a single sentence, "You did the hard part." She did not answer that. She sat with it instead, which was its own kind of answer. They may connected to her Portland player were picked up in Atlanta the week before Thanksgiving. The federal case expanded in ways that went beyond what she had put in the drive, which meant other people had been building their own files. She was a thread that helped close a pattern, not the whole pattern. That was almost a relief. Garrett was questioned twice. His attorneys were present both times. He was not charged. She found out through the news, not from him, which told her more about his restraint than any conversation had. In December she called him. He answered on the second ring. "Madeleine." "I'm coming to Chicago," she said. Quiet. Then, when? "After the holidays, January. For the firm?" She looked out her window at the Savannah street, the iron balconies, the low light. She had come here looking for something that didn't need her name on it. She had found, instead, a life that was almost hers. "For the firm," she said, "and to see about other things." He didn't push it. She had learned to read his silences, and this one was careful with something it wasn't ready to break. "I'll have someone meet you at the airport," he said. "I'll take a cab, Madeleine. I'll take a cab, Garrett." A pause. Then, quietly, "All right." She arrived in Chicago on a Tuesday in January, when the sky was the color of steel and the wind came off the lake like it had a personal grievance. Garrett met her in the lobby of the building, not the airport, which meant he had listened. He looked the same stillness, the same contained attention, the same dark jacket. He looked at her for a long moment without saying anything about the travel or the weather or how long it had been. "You look tired," he said. "I am tired. Do you want to see the office first or eat first?" She had not expected that to be the question. Eat. They ate at a place near the river. No reservation. He seemed to know the host. She did not ask. They talked for 2 hours about the work, the firm's current projects, 2 historic rehab contracts he would be leading. She asked sharp questions and he answered them without deflecting, which she filed as evidence that people could learn new patterns if they tried. Halfway through, she said, "You didn't send anyone to follow me after Savannah." "No. I would have known." "I know." He picked up his water. "I told you I wouldn't." "You told me a lot of things." He met her eyes. "Which ones turned out to be false?" She sat with that. The answer was none. That was the uncomfortable truth. The things that had been wrong were things he had withheld, not things he had manufactured. It was a meaningful distinction, and she had spent 2 months deciding how meaningful. "I'm angry at you," she said. "I know. I'm also here. I know that, too." She looked at her plate. "I don't make things easy." "You mentioned that." "I mean it more now than I did then." He leaned forward slightly, hands on the table, voice low. "Tell me what easy looks like for you. I will do the work." She looked up at him. This man who had watched her from a distance and then, when she was close enough, had chosen to put down the distance instead. Who had sat with her father's name on a document and told her the truth about his own. Who had stepped back every single time she needed space and stepped forward the one time she hadn't known how to ask. "Easy," she said slowly. "Looks like someone who asks before deciding. Who tells me things that cost him something, not just things that protect him. Who was in the room with me, not managing me from the doorway." Garrett was quiet for a moment. Then he said, "Ask me something it costs me to answer." She looked at him steadily. "Did you tell me the truth about why you came to Savannah that night?" The bar. Was it really because of the drive? The question sat between them. He set down his glass. "I came because of the drive," he said. "I stayed at the bar because of you." "That's not the same night." "No." His voice was low. "I went back." She felt the sentence land. "You went back to the bar." "3 nights," he said, "before I let myself speak to you. I told myself it was strategy. By the 3rd night, I knew it wasn't." She did not speak for a long time. Outside, Chicago moved through the January dark, and the river carried the city lights south, and the cold pressed against every window in the building, and none of it was Savannah, and she found she didn't need it to be. "I'm going to be bad at this," she said finally. "So am I. I mean specifically bad. I will check exits in restaurants. I will want to see any document with my name on it before it goes anywhere. I will leave when I feel cornered and then come back when I've thought it through, and I will not apologize for needing the time." He held her gaze. "I will wait. Every time. You can't promise that. Watch me." She looked at him long enough to know he meant it, which was the same length of time it took her to admit that she had driven herself to the airport in Savannah and not looked back, and that the voice she heard the whole way was not her former employer's, not the men who had sent people after her, not her own fear rehearsing its old lines. It was his, quiet, asking before deciding, waiting at a table with his hands open. She reached across and touched the back of his hand, once, brief. The way she had offered her hand in the bar, and he had considered it before taking it. He turned his palm up. She let their fingers settle. Neither of them said anything about what it meant. Some things are cleaner without words attached, and both of them had learned, by different and difficult roads, that the gestures that hold longest are the ones made slowly with full knowledge of the cost. Outside the window, the river moved the same way it moved in Savannah, same direction, same indifference to the lives of people who stood beside it and tried to figure out what came next. Madeleine looked at their joined hands. She thought, I stopped running, and the world didn't end. She thought maybe that was always the difference between distance and freedom. She thought nothing else after that because the food arrived and Garrett made a dry comment about the weather, and she laughed before she could decide not to, and the evening moved forward the way good things do, without asking permission, without announcing itself, simply present and warm and already becoming something she would not have to let go.